Hello everybody and welcome to my true crime channel. I hope you're all well and having a great day. Today I want to talk about CandusBly's missing sister Rosemariebly and whether Candus and Don really know what happened to Rose. So I'm sure a lot of you are already aware that SummerWells' auntie Rosemariebly vanished without a trace 12 years ago. Now I have already covered Rose's case on a video on my channel. I want to go back through all the details of Rose's disappearance and I will do that later in my video. But what I want to discuss is something that DonWells said on Ziggy's channel on YouTube, where he discussed Rose's disappearance and what he does or he doesn't know about it. And then I'm going to compare that to a video that was done by Don and Candus with the media, and it was the first media interview the pair of them gave together. In that interview, Candus and Don spoke about Rose. Something that Candus said in that interview bugged me 5 months ago when I heard it for the first time. This particular thing that Candus said never sat well with me. I always found it extremely bizarre, and it's always raised a huge red flag for me for Candus. So in the first media interview that Don and Candus ever gave together, they both briefly spoke about Candus's missing sister, Rose. And what Candus has said has always bothered me. I'm going to read it out to you now, and then I'm going to play you the video where Candus says this, and also the clip of Don and what he had to say too. So Candus said, "When my own sister going missing, I was in between Arkansas and Tennessee. I don't know all of what happened or what did happen, but I hope that they find her too and bring her home safely too." Don then said, "Well, yeah, there's nothing that, I mean, she disappeared without a trace. They haven't found anything, haven't found a body. And you know, when you see cases like that, that's why I lose hope on Summer, you know. I want to keep hope, but sometimes I lose hope." So going back to what Candus said, when my own sister going missing, so she doesn't say her sister's name, not once does she say Rose. She refers to her sister as my own sister. That's not a bad thing for Candus to say because she's taking ownership of her sister being her sister, but I found it really odd, first and foremost, that Candus did not refer to her sister by her name. So just reading that first sentence again, when my own sister going missing, I was in between Arkansas and Tennessee. So guys, if you had a missing sister or family or loved one, when you spoke about them to the media, would you feel the need to say where you were when they went missing? In my opinion, and as always guys, it is just my humble opinion, you wouldn't need to say, and you certainly shouldn't feel the need to say, where you were when your loved one disappeared. To me, that's a huge red flag that Candus needed to say where she was when Rose disappeared. So moving on to the next part of what Candus said, I don't know all of what happened or what did happen. So when I first heard Candus say that months ago, I thought to myself, that's weird. She clearly knows something, but she's not letting on. So when I first heard this interview that Don and Candus gave, I was listening to it to find out what had happened to Summer. I didn't know that her auntie was missing. This was the first time I'd ever heard anything about Rosemariebly, and Candus feeling the need to correct herself there from saying, I don't know all of what happened, and then following that up with, or what did happen, says to me, at the very least, that Candus knows something about what happened to her missing sister. Then moving on to Don's statement about Rose in this particular interview. Wow, I saw quite a few red flags here flying for Don, but what's new, red flags are always flying for Mr. DonWells. So going back to what Don said, well, yeah, there's nothing, and before nothing, there was a short pause. So going back to that again, well, yeah, there's nothing that, I mean, she disappeared without a trace. They haven't found anything, haven't found a body, nothing. And you know, when you see cases like that, that's why I lose hope on Summer, you know. I want to keep hope, but sometimes I lose hope. So I could start at the end of that statement. The fact that Don says I 3 times there, I lose hope, to me is a huge red flag, because often stuttering over the pronoun I is seen as a sign of deception. It can be that the person is very anxious and stressed because they're lying, and that can often result in the person stuttering over the pronoun I. The fact that Don says I 3 times at the very end there, to me, is a huge red flag. And then going back to the beginning of the statement where he says, well, yeah, there's nothing. So the statement doesn't flow. He has to stop himself, correct himself. Often there are pauses in between words with Don, and when I analysed this statement from Don, it seemed to me like he was trying to find time whilst speaking to think of his next lie. Something minor here, which you may not all agree with, was the fact that Don said, they haven't found anything, haven't found a body. He's sitting next to his wife, Candus, whose sister is missing. To mention the word body seemed quite insensitive to me. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought it might upset Candus, and I thought it was a bit weird for Don to say that. So for me, guys, the 2 main problems I found there was Candus having to say that she was in between Arkansas and Tennessee when her sister went missing. In my opinion, she shouldn't have had to explain what state she was or wasn't in the US when Rose went missing. It seems to me like Candus has some sort of guilty knowledge or guilt over Rose's disappearance and feels the need to explain where she was so that we all know she wasn't in the same state, so therefore she can't possibly be involved. But there's a problem with that. Candus could have been in Wisconsin, where Rose disappeared from. Maybe she wasn't in between Arkansas or Tennessee. Something stinks here. Something stinks really bad.
When my sister went missing, I was in between Arkansas and Tennessee. I don't know all of what happened or what did happen, but I hope that they find her too and bring her home safely too.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, she disappeared without a trace. They haven't found anything, haven't found a body, nothing. And you know, when you see cases like that, that's why I lose hope on Summer. You know, I want to keep hope, but sometimes I lose hope.
When my sister went missing, I was in between Arkansas and Tennessee. I don't know all of what happened or what did happen, but I hope that they find her too and bring her home safely too.
There's nothing. I mean, she disappeared without a trace. They haven't found anything, haven't found a body, nothing. And you know, when you see cases like that, that's why I lose hope on Summer. You know, I want to keep hope, but sometimes I lose hope. I want to keep hope, but sometimes I lose hope.
So I've been listening to a lot of videos on Ziggy's channel, and Ziggy runs a channel on YouTube called Ziggy. If you can't find her, put into the search bar Ziggy SummerWells and you should find her channel. Recently, DonWells has done a couple of interviews with Ziggy on her channel, and in one he spoke about Rose. There were quite a few red flags for me raised for DonWells from this interview that he did with Ziggy. The biggest red flag really was continually referring to Rose in the past tense. Now, okay, Rose has been missing for 12 long years now, so maybe Don and Candus have accepted that she's probably dead. Anyone that has a loved one that's missing shouldn't give up hope, even after 12 long years. So I found it really odd that he kept speaking about Rose in the past tense. That was the first problem that I had. And I suppose really that should have been problem number 2 and not problem number 1, because the first problem that I had, if I'm really honest with you guys, is when Ziggy asked Don the question, did you know Candus's sister, the one that went missing? Don laughed. Now you can definitely hear this laugh. I'm going to make sure that I play the start of this clip a couple of times for you so you can hear it for yourself. So going back to my analysis, which I will continue with after I've shared the clip with you, the first red flag was Don laughing. The second red flag was Don continually talking about Rose in the past tense as if she's already dead. The third red flag was something Don said, which I found quite weird, was that me and Candus were just first starting to get together and we had Josie, our firstborn, when she was abducted. Unless I'm mistaken, I thought Don and Candus were together when Candus gave birth to their firstborn child, unless perhaps they were having relationship problems and they didn't really fully commit to each other until Candus gave birth to their firstborn son. But generally speaking, it seems an odd thing to have to say at all that you were just starting to get together. It almost seemed to me like Don was trying to point out he hadn't known Candus very long when Rose disappeared. So then a red flag number 4, and this is really one of the bigger ones. Another thing that Don said was, and we was in Arkansas, and the police did contact us, and we were like, well, we was in Arkansas. So think back to what Candus said in that very first media interview that her and Don gave. She said we was in between Arkansas and Tennessee when her sister disappeared. But then you have Don stating that him and Candus were in Arkansas. So were they in Arkansas, or were they in between Arkansas and Tennessee? Clearly, from what I've seen and heard, when Don and Candus are asked about Rose, they both always say and seem to revert back to the same old script, that we were in between Arkansas and Tennessee, or we were just in Arkansas. Well, which one is it? Were you in Arkansas, or were you in Tennessee? Were you in between? Why do you even need to say what state in America you were in when your sister disappeared, unless, for some reason, you feel a bit of guilt about it, or you have guilty knowledge of what happened to your sister? So I'm going to play for you now, guys, the clip of Don on Ziggy's channel, and then I will give you a further analysis of what Don said and my thoughts on it afterwards.
Do you know Candus's sister? The one that went missing?
You know what? This is what I knew about Candus's sister. She was a very kind heart. She was willing to do anything that she could to help. She was a very good woman. That's what I knew about her before she got abducted. And me and Candus was just first starting to get together, and we had Josie, our firstborn, when she was abducted. And we was in Arkansas, and the police did contact us, and we were like, well, we was in Arkansas. I mean, we don't know what happened, but all we know about her is that she was a damn good person, very kind heart, and willing to do whatever she could to help people. That's what we knew about her. And that's all I knew about her. And I can verify that she was a really good person. And it's unfortunate. The good people, you know, I don't know. Well, it's crazy. I don't get it.
Well, you know, the question that everybody asks is like, well, how do you know that she was abducted?
Well, because she was in, like, Wisconsin. She had two or three kids. I can't remember. She had 2 or 3 kids, and then she was going to go, like, to a bar to meet somebody or something. I don't know. And then they found her car. I think she worked at a gas station. And they found her car parked somewhere. I don't know, but she was never seen again. And there's no way in hell that she would leave her baby.
Oh. Okay, so I was talking about Summer, but you mean you think both
Summer.
of them?
Oh, I thought you.
Well, I know we were talking about Rose also. That's right. I should have.
Yeah.
But you.
Oh, it's all good.
Did you know Candus's sister, the one that went missing?
You know what? This is what I knew about Candus's sister.
Did you know Candus's sister, the one that went missing?
You know what? This is what I knew about Candus's sister.
Did you know Candus's sister, the one that went missing?
So I know I've said it more than once in this video, but I find it really bizarre, really concerning, and really odd that Don and Candus need to state exactly where in America they were when Rose disappeared. It seems an odd thing for an innocent family member to have to say over and over again when they're asked about Rose. Something else that Don said towards the end of that statement that I thought was really weird. He said, "It's unfortunate. The good people, you know. I don't know. It's crazy. I don't get it." Now, I find that a weird term, a weird word to use when talking about your wife's missing sister. It's unfortunate. Really? Wow. If one of my siblings went missing and my boyfriend just said, "Oh, you know, it's unfortunate," I'd be quite upset by that. I don't think it's a normal word to use when you're talking about someone that went missing, that had 2 young children and has never been found. To me, it's a lot more than unfortunate. It's bloody tragic. It's awful. It's upsetting. It's horrific. It's not unfortunate. It's a lot more than unfortunate. So I'd like to give you a bit more information about Rosemariebly's disappearance. Rosemarie disappeared on the 21st of August 2009, therefore she's been missing for 12 long years. Rose vanished while en route to Cushing in Wisconsin. She was on her way to meet her cousin in a bar, but she never showed. She was last seen leaving her home in her car to go off to meet her cousin, and the place that she was meeting her cousin was only 5 miles from where she lived. Her car was recovered 5 days after she vanished in Grantsburg, which is also in the state of Wisconsin. The car was found abandoned in a parking lot, typically used by truck drivers. The parking lot is approximately 30 miles from where Rose lived. Now, what's weird about this is Rose's car keys were found in the car, but there was no obvious signs of a struggle. DNA was apparently found by the police, but they've never said who the DNA belonged to, and from what I can gather, perhaps the DNA has never been matched to anybody and it's still in the system and nobody knows whose DNA it is. Now, just a bit more information about Rose. She was 21 years old at the time that she vanished. She was 5 feet tall. She weighed 110 pounds. She had brown hair and brown eyes. She often changed her hairstyle and her hair colour. Sometimes it was a red colour. She also had a distinctive tattoo, and that was of 2 red cherries, which was located on her right ankle. She had piercings in her ears and in her belly button or navel. And from what people have said of Rose, she would never leave her 2 young children. So Rosemarie at the time lived in St. Croix Falls, and that's in Wisconsin, and no one had heard that Rose had plans to run away. No one knew that Rose was in any trouble with anyone. No one suspected that Rose would just go off grid and not say anything, especially with 2 young children. So at the time that Rose disappeared, she had 2 young children that were both aged under 2. She was married and she hadn't been married for a long time, but there were reports of problems within her marriage, and apparently her husband had tried to file for divorce 2 months before she disappeared. Now, it is said that Rose convinced her husband not to divorce her, but what I find really weird and really concerning is that only 3 weeks after Rose vanished, her husband filed for divorce, apparently in order to get full custody of their children. Now, some have said that he wanted to do that so that if Rose returned, she could never have custody of the children, which you can understand. Leaving 2 young babies is not a nice thing to do if she did it of her own accord. She had been known to suffer from depression. Some people speculated she may have taken her own life, or she may have not been able to handle the problems in her marriage and left for a new life. But according to Don and Candus, Rose was abducted. There's no doubt about it. Just like her niece, SummerWells, Rose was taken by someone and definitely, according to Don and Candus, abducted. So apparently Rose told her husband that she would be home before midnight, but she never made it to the bar and she never returned home. So the next day, Rose's husband rings some friends to see if they know where Rose is. No one knows where Rose is. He then finds out she didn't meet her cousin in the bar, and the alarm is raised that Rose has vanished. But what I find extremely concerning and bizarre about that is, even if you had problems in your marriage, if your wife had said she would be home before midnight and she doesn't return, doesn't come home all night, surely you wouldn't leave it until the next morning to call the police or to call your wife's friends. Surely within a couple of hours of her not returning after midnight, the alarm should have been raised. I find that really dodgy. I find it really concerning, and I do wonder if Rose's husband was involved in her disappearance, or perhaps another family member. Could it be that Rose's husband is involved in her disappearance? The fact that he filed for divorce so soon after Rose disappears doesn't sit well with me, but then the way Don and Candus talk about Rose doesn't sit well with me either. Could it be that they aren't involved and that Don just thinks that maybe Rose is dead? He seems to think that Summer's dead, and he pretty much accepted that Summer was dead within a week or 2 of Summer vanishing. Could it just be that when Don thinks about Rose, He thinks about her in the past tense and not in the present tense because maybe he thinks that Rose is dead. Or could it be that Don actually knows that Rose is dead and that somehow him and Candus are involved in Rose's disappearance? Something else to say is that Rose loved horse riding, and not long before she disappeared, she'd had an accident and fallen off a horse. During this accident, Rose had a head injury and hurt her head, although it's not thought that she saw any medical advice. Rose spoke with her mother not long before she vanished and said she was experiencing bad headaches. Her mother suggested that she contacted a medical professional, but it's not known or thought that Rose ever did. Could Rose have had a head injury and therefore been slightly confused or slightly concussed? Could Rose have had an accident and her body never been found? Personally, I don't think so. I do suspect foul play. Who knows who is involved here? But something is very weird. Don and Candus have a missing daughter, and not only does Candus have a missing daughter, she also has a missing sister, which to me is highly suspicious. So what do you think about this, guys? Do you think that Don and Candus actually know what happened to Rose? Or do you think they're completely innocent and have no knowledge of where Rose is? And do you think, like me, that maybe, just maybe, Don and Candus do know what happened to Rose and they've kept it secret for 12 years? Now, wouldn't it be great if Rose could be found, the mystery of Rose's disappearance could be solved, and so could that of Summer, so that the mysteries of both of their disappearances could finally be solved and the truth come out? So something that I want to ask, and I'm not sure of myself, do you think that Grandus could be involved in both Rose's disappearance and Summer's? Could Grandus be the common denominator in both disappearances? Or could it be that Grandus is just damn unlucky in having a missing daughter and also a missing granddaughter? So I'd love to know what you think, guys. Please share your thoughts with me. Pop your comments below. Let me know what you think. Where do you think Rose went? Do you think her husband could be involved? Do you think it's more likely that her sister Candus is involved? Or could it be that Grandus has some sort of guilty knowledge, or maybe Rose's husband is involved and the police have never figured it out? Well, anyway, guys, I hope you're all well and taking care of one another. And as usual, I'm going to be back with you all very soon for another true crime video. Bye for now.